Dear learners, welcome back to our discussion on legislative reforms in colonial India. In this session, we will be covering the two more developments, the two major developments, and these developments were actually in form of debates, in form of controversies. So one was age of consent and another one was Child Marriage Restraint Act. Age of consent. So you might be getting curious to know what this consent is all about. This consent is not for marriage. Rather, this consent is for the consummation of marriage, which is also one of the legal concepts, that when marriage takes place, it is one thing, and the consummation of marriage takes us to the relationship, physical sexual relationship between husband and wife. So before we come to the passage of Age of Consent Act 1891, there were two very important cases that that had happened during this period, and not only happened, rather we have prolonged judicial proceedings on these two cases. So first one was Phulmoni Das and Hari Mehti, and the second one is Rakhmabai versus Dadaji Bhekaji. We'll take Phulmoni's case first. What had happened here, that in 1890, Phulmoni Das died as a result of sexual intercourse with her husband Hari Mehti, and Hari Mehti was of 35 years of age at that time, whereas Phulmoni was of 10 years old. It was the case of 1890. In 1860, we already have the Indian Penal Code came into existence in 1860, and under existing Indian Penal Code, which was there and which we got replaced it very recently. So under this, the provisions of IPC, he could not be held guilty of rape, since Phulmoni had been well within the statutory age limit of 10. So we will discuss this in this session itself, that what IPC actually talks about, or rather talked about. When the case went to the court, he did defend himself by citing the same thing, that Indian Penal Code fixed the age of consent at 10, and as Phulmoni was of 10 years age, so he was not guilty of rape within marriage. There was the disposition, this testimony given by the mother of Phulmoni, and I would like to quote it here. I saw my daughter lying on the cot, weltering in blood. Her cloth on the bed were wet, and Hari's cloth were also wet with blood, unquote. Apart from the statement, the medical opinion was also there. And medical opinion was unanimous on the point that Hari had caused this, the forced sexual penetration had caused the death of the girl, whose body was still immature and could not sustain the injuries, because the injuries were caused. And when you'll go to the details of the medical opinion, you will find the very detailed description of the injuries that were there. She died, the Phulmoni Das, she died after 13 hours of acute pain and continuous bleeding. Harimeti was convicted of later 12 months of imprisonment, which generated protest. This is very important to note among a segment of the society, orthodoxy, at that time. This is also very important to understand that Phulmoni's case was not the only one. There were many other cases, and some were reported, some were not reported. We still find, when we talk about for instance child sexual abuse, or when we take the case of incest, or when we take the case of harassment, we know that all the cases that happen in reality are not reported. There might be, one can say that a lot of false cases are also registered, so that might be the case, but that might be the case with different other crimes as well, not only with the issues relating to women, but the common issues as well in those cases also, in case of murder, in case of theft, in case of trespass, in case of corruption also. We find that false cases are being registered. Might be. So that probability is always there. It is not only specifically in relation to women only, or women's issues only. So here what had happened, that have certain documents. For example, Dr. Cheville's investigation of 1856 seemed important, where he noticed at least 14 cases of premenstrual cohabitation. And we do have subsequent another findings which were incorporated in Dr. MacLeod's report, and those also went on the same lines, which means that premenstrual cohabitation, and then injuries being sustained, and then death of the child brides. So, and we know that this was child marriage was a very prevalent practice that was there, and where women were, the girls, young girls, got married in very early age, and then when they acquired puberty, then only they had to cohabit with the husbands. So after Phulmoni, the second case is Rakhmabai's case, and we find that the timeline is very similar, because it was the Phulmoni died in 1890, and Rakhmabai it started 1884, then 1887 it went to the court, and then so we had the 1884, 88. So it was before 1890 the case. The negotiation had happened in the case, this Rakhmabai case. Here Rakhmabai this case was of entirely different nature, but yes, she was the issue of child marriage was present in this case also. So Rakhmabai refused to live with her unemployed and consumptive husband, Dadaji Bhikaji. This refusal generated protest. This refusal, the defiance of Rakhmabai was unacceptable in the society at that time, where women were not having voice. Raising their voice and refusing to cohabit was a huge deal. And among the opponents of the reform, we have a very this being documented, the name of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who saw Rakhmabai's refusal to live with her uneducated husband as the dangers, as suggestive of the dangers of women's education. This, so if you will, because when it comes to women's education, which was also one of the issues that was being taken up during this period, a lot of reform was also being done. Different ways of educating women were also being explored, and then we find separate zanana education was there, and then institutes were being opened up, and then how arrangements, separate arrangements, specific arrangements were being made for women to get educated at that time. But it was not very openly, warmly accepted. There were sections of the society who were not in favor of this idea, and they were of the view that this would somewhere disrupt the stability of the family, of the society. So Rakhmabai's refusal was thus it turned into a big deal, huge deal. So in his defense, now what had happened, that the case went to the court. Dadaji Bhikaji filed a suit for restitution of conjugal rights. Conjugal rights means marital rights. When we get married, we also get certain rights and duties, both the spouses, husband and wife. So what does this restitution of conjugal rights say? That if any one of the spouse denies the rights of the other, then the other party can move to the court and file a suit for restituting, the set of the conjugal rights which are not being provided by the other party. So same had happened here also. In her defense against Bhikaji's suit for restitution of conjugal rights, Rakhmabai submitted a written statement to the court. And in this written statement, she listed the three main reasons why she refused to live with her husband. And her husband was not living in his house, rather in his uncle's house. So first he said that he is not, first she said that he is not able to maintain, not himself and not his wife. Providing for maintenance is obviously because, when marriage is there, then there are certain, as I said, certain rights and duties. So one of the duties upon the husband is maintaining the wife. Now we have got major alterations in this right to maintenance, and we will be covering this in the future modules of this entire course, that how and what kind of alterations are being made by the courts in case of maintenance. But at that time, this was submitted as one of the pleas, that because the husband is not able to provide for proper maintenance and residence for the couple. Second, his ill health. He was consumptive. He was not in the state of stable health, and the character of the people with whom he lived. So these were the three reasons being cited by Rakhmabai. Her refusal was seen as resistance against the very notion of child marriage, and also it was seen as a kind of disruption in the society. And this was a prolonged case, and it went to the appellate court. From the lower court, it went to the appellate court, where Justice Farhan threatened Rakhmabai with 6 months imprisonment because she was not ready to accept the decree for restitution of conjugal rights. She did not want to live with her husband. So she was also asked to pay the cost of the original hearing to Dadaji Bhikaji. Rakhmabai was another very important thing that we need to understand in this case, that Rakhmabai's mother, when she went for second marriage, so all her property, she gave it to her daughter. So Rakhmabai had this substantial amount of wealth, and finally what had happened in this case, that out of court settlement got negotiated for rupees 2000 at that time, on the condition that the husband would never execute the decree of restitution of conjugal rights awarded against Rakhmabai, and to which he agreed because he was having interest in the money. So this had happened, the case it got closed here. However, this case generated national debate on a number of issues. One, you can easily understand, this Rakhmabai's defiance to compulsory conjugality was seen as threatening by the orthodoxy. Then on the issue of child marriage, it raised discussions, it raised public discourse on the issue of child marriage also. And then it also contributed to this increase in the age of consent, because now we started this entire discussion on age of consent, and the two cases which are very important when we try to understand age of consent debate taken place in 1890s. So here it is also very refreshing that Rakhmabai later studied medicine, and she became one of the earliest fully trained women doctors in India, in colonial India. So this was because obviously she was educated, she had taken interest in education and then in the field of medicine, and becoming a prominent name in the field. So here finally we got this Age of Consent Act, and which raised the age of consent from 10 to 12 years for girls. Now we need to understand another very important thing, and it is section 375 of Indian Penal Code, which defined the various circumstances under which sexual intercourse would be considered rape. We had those sections, those clauses within the section. One of the circumstances was the act of sexual intercourse with a woman with or without her consent when she is under 10 years of age. So this was 10 years at that time when Phul Muni died. The exception to this section stated that sexual intercourse by a man with his own wife, the wife not being under 10 years of age, is not rape. What was the implication? Implication was this, that if the wife was below age of 10, her husband's act of sexual intercourse would be considered rape. But if the wife is not below the age of 10, then it would not be rape. And that is why Hari Mehti could not be held guilty of rape, because the wife was of 10 years age. So age of consent was thus at that time fixed at 10, and so was the age under the exception also. Now when this Age of Consent Act 1891 we got this act, so it redefined rape as an age of sexual intercourse with a woman with or without her consent when she was under 12 years of age. So now from 10 it became 12. It also adjusted, rewrote this exception, stating that sexual intercourse by a man with his own wife, the wife not being under 12 years of age, was not rape. So if wife was not under 12, it was not rape, but if the wife was under 12 years of age, then it would be considered rape. So this entire debate was on raising the age from 10 to 12. This revision actually aroused controversy. Now we come to another, and this would be the last legislation which we would take, and this was Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929. So we have come to 20th century now. Here, this was initiated by Harbilas Sharda, and that is why this act is, which later became an act. Initially it was in form of a bill. It is also known as Sharda Bill, Child Marriage Restraint Act. This was the time when we already, have got a number of women's organizations, and one of the organizations which played a very important role in the passage of this act was All India Women's Conference, AIWC. AIWC pursued for this bill both within and outside the Legislative Assembly. This bill also received protest from from certain segments of the society, from the orthodoxy. So here the attempt made by Harbilas Sharda in 1928 to criminalize, now we see that age was again set here through this act. So the objective was to criminalize marriage and sex with a girl below the age of 12 proved to be the most successful. Here it aimed to set the age of marriage at 14 for girls and 18 for boys. So this had happened in the case. Thousands of conservative Hindus, and not only Hindus, Muslims also, protested against the bill. However, this is important to note that women's organizations around this time, they held public meetings, they held grassroots meetings, they generated mass support, they wrote articles, and it was happening between 1925 and 1928, and then they were lobbying for this bill to be passed, promoting the bill by correlating it to women's health and access to educational opportunities. Because when girls, females, young women, young girls, they will get time, the age will be raised to 14, then obviously they will get time for education, because education was also one major issue. As I said, that a lot of efforts were being taken up for encouraging women's education. So it was not happening in isolation. So on the one hand, there were efforts for encouraging education, and on the other hand, there was this effort being made to increase the age for marriage for girls to 14, from 12 to now we had it 14 for girls and 18 for boys. And it was obviously connected to health, their full bodily development, their nutritional status, the stability that was required for entering into the institution of marriage. So the All India Women's Conference here, in alliance with Indian National Congress, it began this campaign. So there was a point when Indian national movement and women's movement were in agreement. The issues were being taken up by both the movements, and these issues related to women as well, apart from or we can say in addition to this call for independence. It was already there, and then there were other issues also being taken up. So Child Marriage Restraint Act, in this entire campaign for the act, we see that uniting of Hindus and Muslims also, and there were opposition in small sections, but we also find this unity it was also witnessed at that time. So finally, we got this act which was being passed and which included Muslims also. And then we had this age which was being raised, age of marriage, minimum age of marriage for women at 14 and for men at 18. Thank you so much. So this was all about the reforms that had taken place during colonial India, and law was being used as a major, as a significant instrument of these reforms. Because whenever we talk about bringing reforms in the society for any segment, be it women or be it any other marginalized community, we need to understand this, that law acts as a major tool, as an instrument through which those reforms are sought for. And the same happened in the colonial past. Thank you so much.